What is up, and welcome to my first video where I do none other than what you read in the title. I'm going to look at the Skyrim Civil War. Yes, a 12-year-old conflict on the internet that you might have heard about if you're in the circles of The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. You've probably played it, and you were probably disappointed because it was one of the most poorly thought out parts of The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This video is going to be relatively off the cuff. I'm not going to have really anything in front of me. I have a very bare bones script to go off of, pretty much just bullet points. And I'm pretty much just going to go down like I've seen many videos before on this. So, what exactly sparked me to do this? Well, I have a lot of time on my hands, and I saw quite a few videos pop up in my recommended over the past few, I guess, months, I think would be more accurate. And much of it was about why the Stormcloaks are right. Now, I don't have really any problem with the Stormcloaks personally as a faction. I more or less am going to look at this from like a lore aspect, and also not I mean a lore aspect, yeah. Maybe more of a realistic look at Skyrim's Civil War as a whole. So, this really is sparked because I saw a specific video that was kind of not great. I mean, the guy himself is fine, like, he talked about some stuff, he got some stuff wrong, because that's just kind of how it is. But this is really what sparked it, in that I was really interested in just making a video talking about this, putting my own 2 cents in, and truly talking about whether or not the Imperials or the Stormcloaks are right. So, without further ado, let's get into the nerd shit. So, from a lore aspect, who exactly would be right? Well, we need to actually like set the scene first, because it's kind of hard to understand this conflict without like understanding, the actual like world that this even takes place in. So if you've played the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, you'll know it ends with the death of Martin Septim becoming a dragon and blowing the top off of a building and killing Mehrunes Dagon, banishing him from the mortal realm, all that shit. And it's kind of, left up in the air of whether the Empire will actually like do well in this coming storm. So the Empire is left pretty much in the hands of a guy that you talk to right at the end of the game. He's not very in the game presence wise until the very end, of this High Chancellor Akato guy who becomes potentate afterwards. He rules. Eventually he's assassinated by a group called the Thalmor in like the 20-something year of the Fourth Era. And this is kind of where this group comes in. They're a bunch of racist elf people who, I'll get more into their actual like motives later, because it's not as important and where to understand the lore yet. But they're able to eventually take control of the Somerset Isles. They declare independence, just as Black Marsh did before them. And the Empire starts like kind of slip. Morrowind technically is left, but also hasn't left. Morrowind was left completely destroyed by the eruption of Red Mountain in the opening years of the Fourth Era. So they're technically not valuable at all, which is something a lot of people don't understand, because not only did they have Red Mountain explode, they were also completely sacked and brutalized by the Argonians, looking for revenge for their centuries of slavery. So Morrowind has not had the best luck. So when people say like Morrowind was this like great piece to the Empire, and now that it's gone, they're surely dead, like I wouldn't even really include it in talking about why the Empire's dead. But moving along, the Empire pretty much is left by this point with High Rock, Hammerfell, Skyrim, Cyrodiil, Valenwood, and elsewhere. And a little bit after the elves have gained their independence, they take control over Valenwood through a coup, and this kind of upsets a lot of the power in the Empire now. It definitely makes them more fearful, and especially when you have the moons, which are important to the culture of the Khajiit. They are strucken from the sky, if you will, and there is no moon for a while, and it's pretty important, especially in their birthing cycle of having moons, because that is very much dependent on what kind of Khajiit you're even born as. So it was definitely a pretty big deal, and when it did come back, Jesus, when it did come back, the Thalmor immediately took credit. Elsewhere is split into two kingdoms, and they joined the Dominion. And this kind of sets a stage politically of where we are in like 171, I think, is the year when the Great War starts. So, what exactly is the Great War? Why should we care? Well, in Delphine and Esbern in the game talk about this date, the 30th of Frostfall, which is essentially when the Great War actually begins, when the Dominion bring a cart of supposedly gifts to the Empire and demand them sign this treaty where the Empire gives a bunch of reparations. They cede Southern Hammerfell to the Dominion. At least I think that's in the original one. The Blades are disbanded, and the worship of the ninth divine Talos is banned. So the Empire does have a debate on whether it would be wise to deny this, because obviously this is an ultimatum. This isn't like, if they say no, the Dominion's not just going to go back and go, well, they said no, better luck next time. Like, much of the generals of the Empire were sitting there like, you really should probably accept this. And one man said no, and that's your boy, Titus Mede II. He told him no, he was going to fight, and, well, surprise attack. The Empire wasn't ready, just like the generals said, and the Dominion invades. They invade, taking like Leowin, Breville, Anvil. One army goes into Hammerfell and starts, messing over there, messing with the cities over there. And, the Empire is very much on, like, running away. They're being defeated, battle after battle, whatever they're involved in. Cities are being taken. This all culminates in the fall of the Imperial City, where the Emperor barely is even able to escape. And it's, taken by this guy, Lord Narathan, who's this elvish general in Thalmor. And also a Daedra worshipper. Funnily enough, he worships Boethia, who is, I believe, as far as I remember, the Daedric Prince of, like, Deceit. She's the one with the ebony blade in Skyrim. That's as far as I remember. And the Emperor leaves and demands a lot of soldiers and garrisons come from different parts of the Empire, and starts building up a new army. And one of the things that happens during this time is a lot of soldiers leave from Margarth, which causes the Forsworn to rise up and take control of the city. This will be important later. So the Reach is technically independent for a period of time. But also during this time, the Hammerfell campaign, if you will, starts stalling for the Thalmor. Their army there gets kind of beaten at Skaven, which is a city in Hammerfell. And this is around the time the Emperor tells the general there, I don't remember his name, that he needs to bring his army back so that they can take back the Imperial City. So what he does instead is discharges a lot of soldiers, specifically Redguard soldiers, so that they can continue the fight. And a lot of them were wounded, which weren't really wounded. Many of them were battle ready. But he takes the large part of his force away, and they end up, this all culminates in the Battle of the Red Ring, where the Emperor and his legion finally is mobilized enough where they can actually combat the Thalmor. They end up winning. The story goes that the Emperor leads the charge with the sword Goldbrand, which is a Daedric weapon, I believe a Boethia too, which is ironic. Uh, I believe. I mean, I wouldn't quote me on that or anything, but he eventually takes back the city, supposedly under the card game retcon set, but I don't know. I haven't played it, so I don't know for sure. But yeah, he takes back the city. Lord Narfen's defeated, captured, um, and supposedly dies, or he was carried away by a winged Daedra. I don't really know. It's a bit weird. But I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure because Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls as a whole is very much written where there is no really reliable narrator of who's right and who's wrong. And that's just one of those things you don't really know. But the Empire defeats the Dominion. The Dominion's armies are just shattered, and so is the Empire's armies. I mean, they're also not exactly in the best position. I mean, they've been losing the entire war. So the Emperor makes the decision to say, well, we'll sign the treaty, we'll live to fight another day. And that's exactly what they do. The fighting was over. He didn't see a way for the Empire to eventually win this war. So the war ends. Some people are unhappy. Some people can see the strategic utility, some people can't. And that's kind of the setup for the main man, Ulfric Stormcloak, who is the son of the Jarl of Windhelm. Ulfric was captured in the earlier stages of the war and was there for a while. They kept trying to get information and break him, and eventually they do, and lead him to believe that the information he gives is what causes the Imperial City to fall. Of course, we do actually know, supposedly, from the Thalmor dossier, which I don't believe would actually lie about that, that the city actually fell before he even broke. So it was all a way to play with him psychologically, and it does kind of work. He comes back after he escapes, which I don't think it's in question if he escapes or not. I do think they say that they let him escape. I don't find the dossier as like compelling as some people say it is, so I honestly don't think it's really worthy of mentioning as much as people like to think that it is on both sides. So Ulfric escapes. He's there at the signing. He's mad. He goes back to Skyrim, and this is where the infamous Markarth incident takes place. He goes to Markarth with his army and takes back the city and massacres a lot of people who were pro-Forsworn, throws a lot of them in Sidna Mine, and the rest of them were able to escape into the hills. It's pretty brutal, but also the Forsworn are kind of messed up. They're not exactly the nicest people, but I mean, it is what it is. The Forsworn are able to escape somewhat. Some of them are spared, like Madnak, the king in rags. I think his name is Madnak, or at least that's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure. I'm not a Reachman, but Ulfric kind of stays there a little bit until the Legion comes back, and this time they have the ex-Jarl of Markarth there with him, and he basically says, "Hey, give me my city back. I want to rule again." And Ulfric's like, "All right, but you can on one condition, that you allow Talos worship." And the Legion basically says, "Okay, but just let's not have the Thalmor know, because obviously that's like a breach of the treaty." The Thalmor figure it out. They get mad, and Ulfric is locked up again for a while. And this is one of the first parts when Talos worship becomes more strict, if you will. This is when the Thalmor actually take more of an interest in Skyrim than they did previously, which we do know is true, because when you talk to Alvor in Skyrim, he pretty much tells you that people did still worship Talos even after the signing of the White Gold Concordat, and it was only after Ulfric caused issues that they actually got involved further than they really meant to. So Ulfric's in jail for a while. He's not very happy. His dad dies while he's in prison. He's able to smuggle out a eulogy. You know, it's kind of cool. And Ulfric's eventually let out. He becomes Jarl again, and this is just around the time that the High King of Skyrim dies, which means that a moot is held. Now, this is when Torg comes up into the lore. Torg is a pretty young guy, or young boy, really, is the better way to describe him. He's not a warrior. He's not a war hero like Ulfric. He's just a guy. And he does... There's nothing really to suggest he was like a bad High King for like the 2 months he really ruled. But during this moot, which didn't need to happen, by the way, Skyrim politics works as it is pretty hereditary, unless there's like no kids of the High King, and then they hold the moot to find out who should be High King next. So Torg had the moot held anyways, and he was unanimously put in by every Jarl, and this does include Ulfric Stormcloak. We know he was there because he used the moot as a way to promote his Skyrim independence movement. And Torg did actually have a lot of respect for him for this, and also because he's, you know, a war hero. I mean, Ulfric was like the guy. I mean, he's the Nord that people looked up to. But Skyrim didn't instantly become independent, which, you know, didn't work in Ulfric's favor. So he eventually finds himself going to the capital, ending up in the throne room, and before people realized it, Ulfric challenged him to a duel. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because technically this is legal until he uses the voice. It is very legal. But let's not ignore the fact that Torg is not like a warrior. We know for a fact he's not like this great general, great leader, or anything that we really know of. He's a young kid. He's not Ulfric Stormcloak. So Ulfric knew what he was doing. This boy's not gonna win. Ulfric knew that, or else if he really feared him, he might not have done it. But no, he challenged him. Torg had to accept because, again, it is the Nordic ways. So he did, and he died. He had the Thuum used against him. This is when Ulfric really does make a mistake. If he had just killed him the normal way with a sword or his hands or whatever the hell he wanted to use, that would have been one thing. But he used the Thuum, and this man is kind of an ex-Greybeard, or at least an ex-Greybeard in training. So he does follow the way of the voice, or he did. If you know the way of the voice, using the Thuum offensively is not a good thing. Using it defensively, using it as a way to understand yourself and the world around you is more of what he was trained to do. Instead, he used the Thuum to kill his king. And that's where he makes his first mistake. That's a big mistake, by the way. I mean, the Markarth incident is a mistake for what he eventually tries to do, but the killing of High King Torg is the huge one that really fucks him over in the long run, because a lot of people either lose respect or just straight up never support him anyways, or they gain respect, like you see with half of Skyrim. And this is when the Civil War really begins. Ulfric starts having people pick sides. The original lines are Dawnstar, Winterhold, Windhelm, Riften, and Falkreath. However, I think before the war really starts, Dingir of Stoon, who I believe is the name of the ex-Jarl of Falkreath, is deposed. I guess it's the right way to say it. He's too old, so they have him step down, and his son comes up. Now, what's funny about Falkreath is that neither side has very good leaders over there. Dingir of Stoon is a crazy old man who should not be Jarl. Sidgir is a very corrupt person who does not need to be Jarl. So it's really funny how you'll see some people say like, but Sidgeir, he's corrupt, he's evil. You can no, we shouldn't have him. We need Dingir of Stone, and then you listen to him. He's fucking insane. I mean, I've done his quest kind of recently. It's really funny. But eventually it very much just kind of boils down to half of Skyrim fighting the other half, and that's kind of where it is. Um until they send Tullius up, and he's the guy who gets shit done. He's known for putting down unrest, and that's kind of his big thing. So he comes up, and the war immediately tilts back into the Imperial's favor. He immediately starts winning battles and captures Ulfric at Darkwater Crossing, takes him to Helgen. Eventually, they capture you, put you on the same card as Ulfric, and wouldn't you know, that's where the game begins. You waking up at Helgen. That's the story's lore up until that point. So, who exactly is right? That's a pretty interesting question. Well, I think a lot of Ulfric's motives are somewhere in the middle of where Ulfric says what it is and what the Empire says what it is. Obviously, Ulfric has ambitions to be High King. He wouldn't have killed Torg if he did. We know Torg probably would have accepted an independent Skyrim had Ulfric just talked to him about it. No, we do know that he wanted to be High King, but does that mean he's like this mass murdering, racist, evil dude? No, I don't think so. I've heard many people say Ulfric's a racist. He's not a racist. I mean, is it really that surprising that the Dark Elves are not exactly on Ulfric's top of the list when it comes to winning a war? And also that the Dark Elves themselves, I have no sympathy for them playing Morrowind and knowing how racist they are. Like, racism's pretty common in the Elder Scrolls universe. I don't have any sympathy for them. Sorry. The Argonians, maybe a little bit more, but I can also understand the fact that Ulfric doesn't want, the tensions of Dark Elves and Argonians living in the city boiling over and causing riots in his capital city. That would not look good, and that would not be good. Sorry that Argonians and Dark Elves have a pretty complicated history, especially since they've sacked and brutalized their capitals in the past 200 years, and a lot of them are probably alive to see it. So, yeah, it's not exactly a fun time for Windhelm. So, I don't think he's a racist for that. Also, we do know from some NPCs from the Grey Quarter, they say that the Grey Quarter wasn't always this bad, but they made it that bad. But, I mean, maybe Bethesda meant he should be racist, but he doesn't really come off as that. He just comes off as a guy who cares about winning the greater war instead of just kind of not. So, let's see. I don't believe Ulfric's a racist. I don't believe he's very evil either. Ulfric does seem misguided, and I'll get into that in a second. But he doesn't seem evil. Like, he seems like a guy who does care. If you listen to his speech, Why I Fight, it's honestly a really well-written part of the Civil War questline. And it doesn't even have to come up in the Civil War questline. Ulfric is kind of right to be angry. I mean, yeah, it does kind of suck. Having the same people you fought a war against now invading your homeland. Is that exactly what happened? Not really, but that's the way that he sees it, and that's doesn't mean that he's lying about it. There's no reason to lie about it. He's not giving a speech to his men. He's telling that to Galmar. They have the same experiences. Galmar is already loyal to him. That's the thing. There's no reason for Ulfric to lie in that. Does that mean he's not does that mean, like, he's 100% like right? No. But it doesn't mean that he's lying. And that's the main thing. And that's just kind of a big problem with a lot of people who are anti-Ulfric. Try to do is say that Ulfric's like racist and shit, and they really don't have any evidence for that. There really isn't any evidence for that. But, It is what it is. You can't really do much with that. But does that mean that he would be the best for Skyrim? And I think the answer is no. While it probably does come from a good place, um, him loving his country, that doesn't mean that he would be like the best person for the job. I think that very much isn't true. If you look at even how Skyrim is as a province, if you've played the game, you'll know that Skyrim isn't exactly the most peaceful place, nor is it the most economically viable place. Half their cities are like small towns as large as Riverwood. They're not exactly like bustling cities like they are in Oblivion or like they would be in High Rock. No, they're just kind of, shitholes. Um, and like Skyrim's very much reliant on trade anyways, with Solitude and the East Empire Trade Company, and of course Whiterun being the land trade capital of Skyrim. Without trade, Skyrim falls apart. Economically, they don't have much going for them. They don't have like much to really export. Or I mean, they rely too much on imports. They don't have enough to export. And that's the main problem when you're dealing with Scandinavian societies. Most of them come from like northern hellish wastelands that aren't exactly like economically great. As you would know with the Vikings, a lot of them had to raid and get resources that way. That was kind of what they did. And Skyrim's probably pretty similar, especially in lore. They did a lot of attacking their neighbors instead of, just kind of building up the economics in Skyrim. That's just kind of how it is. And that's not a bad thing, but Skyrim is way too reliant on the Empire. And I'll get into that more in the Nord culture part, because I have a big issue with how Bethesda's designed Nord culture in Skyrim specifically. But Skyrim as a province is way too reliant on the Empire. And that's kind of where we get into, if Skyrim's independent, what does it do? Where does it go from here? What is Ulfric's plan? Do we know? I mean, there's a lot of talk of like, he's gonna like get in there and get things done, and they're gonna ally with Hammerfell and their House Redder, and the Dragonborn's friends with House Redder, and so they're just gonna be able to like, go in there and do shit and get things done. Are they? I mean, truly, are they? I've never noticed that. I mean, why would House Redderin or Dark Elves in general help Ulfric? What do they gain from that? And also, one of the videos I saw was like, but House Redderin controls Morrowind. It's like, that's not really true. I think what you're more thinking of is House Telvanni probably owns more, because I'm pretty sure it was House Redderin that was largely destroyed by the Argonians, and they even sacked Blacklight, which is a city fairly close to the northern border of Skyrim. You'd have to like look at a map, but it's like right there. That's not like it's a southern city by any means. It's the most northernmost city in Morrowind. So House Redderin is not exactly this like economic hotspot. Morrowind is not an economic hotspot. As I stated previously, Morrowind was largely destroyed by Red Mountain. Does that mean all of it was? No. But I think you would be more... you should probably look more into Telvanni as who you're talking about, with them controlling Morrowind. Even though no house does, Telvanni likely controls like Mournhold and places like that. I don't think House Indoral actually exists much anymore. So there's a lot of, especially with the Tribunal Temple falling apart. So there's a lot of conflict in Morrowind that doesn't make it a very easy to ally with place. So some people say like, well, High Rock will join Skyrim because Ulfric said that he would try and send stuff to High Rock. But again, the question is, why would they join Skyrim? What do they gain from joining them? Skyrim doesn't gain much from joining High Rock, mainly because High Rock's a largely mountainous place. They might gain skilled mages, and that is something that Skyrim would need if they're going to fight against someone like the Dominion at some point. They definitely need some mages. because Skyrim in a large part is just kind of country bumpkins that don't use magic, and that's very evident with how the College of Winterhold is treated in Skyrim, and we know that's how they're treated in Skyrim. They literally say they're not treated very well. Go to Winterhold. It's right there for you. But um why would High Rock join them though? Why would they stay with the Empire? I don't know either. They'd probably just go back to independent squabbles like they have done for the past 1,000 years that they've existed. I mean, High Rock won't even just gain its independence and be a unified state. It'll be multiple different ones. That's just how High Rock is. It won't be unified by anyone. So you're pretty much left with, well, where are you going to go, right? Well, Skyrim might go to Hammerfell, but why would Hammerfell help them? Not only does Hammerfell suffer from a lot of issues internally, especially with them being split in half culturally, and culture is something I'll get into in a second, but again, why would Hammerfell help them? And some people will say, well, Hammerfell was able to defend itself against the Dominion, but I think you're in large part missing the context of that. Hammerfell has a lot of things going for it. It's fucking cannons, stone wizards, and skilled warriors. Skyrim has farm boys, no mages, and no cannons. They have like the 10 companions that'll go over there and fight them. Sure, whatever. And like 4 of them are werewolves. Fine. But Hammerfell was able to do what they did also because of the situation in the Dominion at the time. The Dominion had just gotten out of the Great War. They had just been wiped out pretty much. They sent a small force, not only because they couldn't spare a huge army, but also because they didn't feel like Hammerfell would be very strong against them. They had failed to realize the Empire had already discharged a lot of Red Guards with all of their equipment too. Like they still had their Imperial equipment. So, I mean, yeah, the Dominion lost in there due to a large amount of reasons that Skyrim just doesn't have. It does have the Dragonborn, sure. There you go, there's your new nuclear weapon. Fine. But that's also reliant on the Dragonborn even siding with them in the first place, which we really don't know in lore who Bethesda is going to have him side with, if any of them. They're probably just going to have Season Unending be the canon event, and the Dragonborn goes and like fucks off to Atmora or ends up in Hermaeus Mora's Plane of Oblivion for fucking forever, because that's just how it is. So I guess we can talk. Ooh, what about? Well, I guess we can talk about Skyrim economically again for one more point, in that a lot of Skyrim and the population that makes it up is not like civilians, it's bandits. There's like 90% bandits, 10% random civilians, and like wandering wastrels that go around the roads. And once those 90% of the Skyrim populations get hungry when Skyrim can't import food because they don't have any allies. And oh yeah, another one, Black Marsh. Good luck getting their support, guy. Good luck, Ulfric, getting the support of Black Marsh. I mean, if you can do it, great, but I doubt it. I doubt Black Marsh would even have an audience with him. Good luck even getting to their capital. So Ulfric really has nothing. He can't really import food from anywhere, so he pretty much has to rely on his own farms, which are few and far between. 2 farms isn't going to feed an entire province. So those bandits will get hungry. They'll go into the cities. They'll raid. They'll take the food. Civilians will get hungry, and they won't be very happy, because when civilians are hungry, that's when shit hits the fan for a lot of societies. I mean, you know, looking at you, Russia, during World War One. So Skyrim's not exactly in a good position if it does become independent. And that's also ignoring the fact that there's also different cultures in Skyrim. Are we ignoring the Forsworn? Are the Reachmen just gonna like give up and go back to High Rock? No. they're gonna try and get their independence again. And guess what? A weak new state like Skyrim, yeah, that's gonna be pretty easy to grapple power away from, especially Markarth, which was previously under control of, or Markarth was previously controlled by the Legion, which means that you're gonna have a power vacuum in there because this new Jarl isn't gonna be able to establish himself so quickly. So Markarth could pretty easily fall to the Forsworn, especially if you take the Forsworn ending of the Sid Mine quest line as the actual canon ending, which is the one that seems more likely, since that's the one that they kind of railroad you into. It's, a little bit different if you actually kill everybody in there, but also that's kind of hard, and I don't think that's what is meant to happen. But with Madinac and all of them outside of the city, like, come on, the Silverbloods aren't going to be able to keep power for that long, especially if you have these rejuvenated Forsworn armies in the Reach. Just, good luck. And even looking at that, you have, what about the pro-Imperials? What are they going to do? Where are they going to go? They're not just going to leave. They're still going to be there. They're not going to be happy with Ulfric, especially after you've taken their cities from them. So, no, those Jarls are going to want their power back. These people are not going to support Ulfric instantly. No, people will get mad. There will be unrest. And even if that isn't true, places like Falkreath have a more imperial culture than those of like Winterhold, solely due to proximity. So you're just dealing with a lot of cultural unrest, and you're going to have a lot of issues being an independent Skyrim that has to set up all these new institutions to be able to actually support itself. So Ulfric's really kind of fucked. And even ignoring that, once Pale Pass is cleared up, because we know that Pale Pass is caved in, we know that they're just gonna send like one legion in there that's actually trained and just curb stomp Skyrim. That's all they have to do. They're gonna enter through a weak point, being Falkreath Hold, and they're gonna easily be able to take at least their own parts back. It doesn't seem likely that an independent Skyrim could even survive. So what maybe could happen is that without Dragonborn intervention, maybe the Stormcloaks do succeed. And then maybe once Pale Pass is cleared, one legion goes in, kills all the country bumpkins, and takes Skyrim back. I mean, hey, Tullius is dead. That sucks, but it is what it is. Beggars can't be choosers in war. So, as I stated before, some places have different culture, and Nord culture is a big issue. And you hear like Skyrim for the Nords and shit like that. It's kind of funny when you look at that and then find out, wow, the Nords really don't have a different culture from Cyrodiil. They don't even have their Nordic pantheon in game because fucking Todd Howard thought you'd be too stupid to understand it. There's no reason why they didn't include it other than they thought you wouldn't be able to know what the fuck's going on. Nords don't have the same religion. They don't worship Talos. They worship like Shor and Kine and Soon and Stoon, or all those weird names, and Ysmir. All this shit, and yet it's not in game. The only people who say those are the bandits, or the real Nords. That's the funny part. There are. Ulfric's not a real Nord if he worships Talos. Come on, like. Are you serious? Oh man. That's what's funny about Skyrim as a game. It's so dumbed down that why should they get independence? They're not Nords. They're just Northern Imperials at this point. They don't have their own culture. They don't have their own society. They're just stupid Imperials. That's all they are. Maybe that's evidence from how much they rely on the Empire now compared to where they were even during Oblivion. Maybe that's what they're trying to show, and if so, that'd be smart, but I don't know. I don't see that. Who knows? Maybe that's true. But Nord culture is just so far gone. And then, oh my god, you get the same thing of like, the Empire, they're trying to turn back on their founder, Tiber Septim. Oh my god. It's like, yeah, that doesn't seem very true. I mean, ignoring the fact that technically the Empire has already kind of died out once, and we're really in a fourth empire, not really the third empire, but I feel like the Medes just more masquerade as the third empire when they're really not. Um, so I mean, I don't really see the arguments of that because obviously some of them do still support Talos. Leggett Ricka is one of those. If people bothered to play the Imperial side, they'd find out that she does obviously still support Talos. She obviously still respects Ulfric, even if he, made the blunder of declaring a civil war for a stupid reason. I mean, all of it is just kind of like, did you play the game? I mean, did you? Oh, but you'll get something like on one video that I saw. There's people that'll go, well, you'll get this Imperial dialogue saying that the Empire is the only thing that keeps the Dominion out of Skyrim, and like that's not true. That's wrong. And I get what you're saying. At a surface level, that makes sense. But no, that's just not true. Solely because the Dominion itself is not really in Skyrim. They have some justiciars in there. But the Dominion itself has not invaded and taken over Skyrim, which would be 1,000 times worse for the people than being under the Empire and having justiciars take what are technically criminals. Does that make that law justified? Does it make the White Gold Concordat justified? No. But the problem is that those justiciars are just kind of a symptom of a problem, yeah, but I think the main problem people have is that they're viewing it too much literally. Like there's no nuance in the Imperial's words. And that's kind of a problem because obviously it doesn't mean that there is no Dominion president, that there is no Dominion presence at all. What he means is, or what a lot of these guards mean, it's not just one guy, is that the Dominion cannot just actively take over Skyrim as long as the Empire is there. If Skyrim is independent, that opens the door, the possibility that they can just go in there. But again, you'll have people go like, but the Dominion, they can't invade because they lost in Hammerfell. As if like Hammerfell and Skyrim are comparable at all. Like, oh my god. It's just crazy. I mean, you can choose whichever side you want. I do have a lot of things that I do like about the Stormcloaks. However, it just doesn't make sense for them to be independent. I don't get it. I mean, maybe there's like this great reason as to why they should be, but I haven't really heard it. And I've seen many of these videos. You'll just see the same shit of, but the Thalmor, they have diplomatic immunity. No, they don't. Did you play the game? I mean, Tullius tells her to fuck off in the beginning. You can go to that Thalmor, the Thalmor fort, like Northwatch Keep or whatever. If you actually go through the Imperial side of the Civil War, you can ask Tullius to release the prisoner. He'll give you a note and you just go in there and do it. I mean, obviously they don't just have all diplomatic immunity. Yeah, I mean, the embassy, sure, but do you know what an embassy is? I mean, that's just not part of Skyrim anymore. It's technically like Dominion lands. Even if it's just a building. That's what an embassy is. And it's not like having an embassy means that you're instantly under the control of the Dominion. Like, that's stupid. That's like saying that Iran's in control of the United States because they have an embassy in it. That's not true. Actually, I don't know if Iran has an embassy. I would assume that they do, but okay. I'll use another example. Russia probably has an embassy in the United States. That doesn't mean that the United States is controlled by Russia. An embassy doesn't do anything. It's just diplomacy. That's it. That's all it is. But, let's see. Other than that, one argument I've seen is that Elisif is a bad ruler because she's a woman. Now, you can get into like maybe that's a little based, but listen, it's 201 of the fourth era. There is no sexism in Tamriel, sadly. I know you're shocked, right? There's no sexism in Tamriel. It's crazy, I know it's shocking, but I mean, I was shocked when I heard that, honestly. I mean, it's like, believe what you want, but if that's your one gripe with Elisif, that's the only thing you can think of, come on. That's just sad, honestly. I mean, again, think what you want about a woman being in control of Skyrim, but have you, like, listened to her? I mean, like, it's not like she doesn't give a fuck about her people. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, hey, I'm not gonna deny anybody's opinion. Believe what you want, but sometimes it can go a little too far. Maybe that's a little too far. And even if we're gonna go into like the whole like based argument of like anti-woman, like, come on. What about the based Roman LARPers? I mean, come on. The Imperials are just on their own based. What is Ulfric Stormcloak? He's just like these stupid Scottish LARPers. Like, freedom! Fuck you, bro. Like, if really that's what you're thinking, it's like really gonna save Skyrim? I don't know. I mean, again, if you just like the faction because like you like Ulfric or the aesthetics or something, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But, does it doesn't really hold water when you're trying to make the argument that the Empire is bad because, like, it doesn't control as much landed territory as they did 201 years ago. Sorry to tell you, but that's not a real argument. Is the Empire dead? Not yet. I mean, say what you will, but even if we look at our own history, look at the Eastern Roman Empire. I mean, they literally fell apart in 1204. Somehow still came back and survived for another 200 years. I mean, say what you will about losing territory, fine, but the Empire can always come back. And of course, it always can go back under one banner with the based Dragonborn. That's what you're really going to see. That's what Bethesda should do. Fuck the Medes. Who gives a fuck about the Medes? Based Dragonborn, that's who should be Emperor of all mankind. And I will firmly stand behind that belief. All we need is based Dragonborn. We don't need cringe Ulfric or loser Elisif. We need the Dragonborn. But yeah, that's just kind of my opinion. I mean, who's right in the Civil War? I mean, yeah, in my opinion, it's probably the Imperials. Believe what you want. I mean, maybe you like the Stormcloaks for other reasons, and I mentioned. Maybe you like them for who knows what. I'm not pro Stormcloak, but you're entitled to your own opinion. You don't like Elsa because she's a woman, fine. Believe what you want. But that is a genuine take I've heard from a video, but it's fine. In the end, this is my opinion. So, yeah. The Empire is based in your cringe.
Talos be with you.
What was that, Legate?
Nothing. Just saying goodbye.